Now you might be asking, why the heck would I want to do a lawn renovation? There are several different reasons you want to do a lawn renovation. One of those reasons may be your lawn is in very bad shape and you have more weeds than grass. Sometimes it's easier just to start brand new. My particular reason, when I put this lawn in 8 years ago, I used the cheapest seed mix I could find, a Sudden Shade mix from an off-brand. Now it's grown fairly well, it's thick. The problem I have is it's not very heat tolerant. So this mix is a fine fescue, a ryegrass, and a bluegrass, a Kentucky bluegrass. I like the ryegrass and Kentucky bluegrass, but that fine fescue really checks out if it stays above 85 degrees for any length of time. And you can see what that causes is a lot of brown in my yard. I put it in the irrigation system last year. I thought I'd give it one more chance of giving it water in these hot conditions, but it still does not like it and turns brown. You can see this area here is one I've renovated already to 100% bluegrass. The line is right here, and if I look down at this, there's a lot more brown in this. The bluegrass, and it is handling the heat much better than this. You can see the same conditions, same soil, everything. This just has a brown tint to it. This doesn't. So now I know it's definitely not a moisture issue, and I've been keeping a closer eye on this, and very interestingly, we can see this looks like it's affecting the fescue, and that's what I've seen over time. But if we really zoom in on this, there's these pink fuzzy things that are attached on the grass. And so that must be some sort of fungus. There is some green in there if we look, and it's the bigger blades or the wider blades. So that tells us that is the bluegrass that's still alive in there, and what's dead is this fescue. In about a week since I noticed that pink fungus, and it has continued to progress. It's remained pretty hot. You can see it's taking a toll on this fescue in particular. Some of these spots, these brown patches, I mean, it's pretty severe. Basically, the whole thing has died off. So the big question is, do I do more killing off existing lawn and changing to Kentucky bluegrass to prevent that brown patch? And I think we all know the answer to that. Heck yeah. All right, I have my water added. Agitate that sucker to mix it up, and we're ready to spray. Now you say this might seem like a lot of work, and it is, but there's one benefit. When you kill your grass, you don't have to mow for a while. But let's be honest, I kind of like cutting my grass. Anyway, let's get to it. It is the middle of July in the upper Midwest, so one thing to check in your particular area before you kill off your grass is your soil temperature, to make sure it's not too high or too low. This is an important part of the my seed germination triangle. If the soil temperature is too high or too low, no matter how much water and seed to soil contact you give that seed, it will not germinate. So let's check what we're at right in the middle of July in the upper Midwest. I believe the reality of it is our soil temperature never gets too high. So the biggest fear I have is running out of temperature. So that's why I don't have a fear of doing it right in the middle of summer where I live. Let's check it. We'll just give it a minute, then read it. My soil temperature at 1:30 p.m., full sun day, 82 degrees, is at 78. So I'm not in fear of that's going to go any higher. Our upper bound on our seed germination is 80 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm at 78. As I suspected, basically it can't get too hot, especially considering once I lay down the seed, I'm going to be watering And this particular area of the lawn has not had water for quite some time in preparation for applying the glyphosate, so that it wanted moisture and sucked that stuff up good for a nice clean kill of the existing grass. It's been 3 days since I did my first spray. You can see I missed a few spots, so I'm gonna go ahead with a second spray, make sure I get those spots I missed. And I think my first spray was on the light side, so I'm gonna make sure I go over everything again with another dose, get a good kill off. I do have time is on my side, so I don't want to rush this. It's a lot of effort and money in seed. I don't want to have to do it again, so I'm going to take my time on the front end here and make sure I eradicate all of the things that I do not want. But it is kind of a pain. I don't really want to have to do this, but it's the right thing, so I'm going to do it. Our grass is sprayed twice and dying off really good. Now step 2 is to get some grass seed thrown down. I'm going with 100% bluegrass mix. A local cooperative had this stuff in bulk. Warning, it is not cheap. This stuff is about $8 a pound. So for this 25 pounds, it was 200 bucks. You can see the mix on here. Supposedly a very high quality mix of grass seed. Stuff developed at universities. Now the big question is, I'm going with 100% bluegrass seed. Why isn't this the norm? One of the reasons is bluegrass seed takes a while to germinate. So normally in these mixes, we have some sort of ryegrass or fescues that germinate much sooner, get established, help keep weeds at bay, and give time for this bluegrass to germinate. I'm patient. I'm going to go with this. I want 100% bluegrass mix. This stuff takes 20 days of sitting in the correct conditions to germinate. So if you do everything right, it's still going to take almost a month for this stuff to start popping up out of the seed. And that's quite a long time. That's one of the reasons I'm starting so early this year. Normally, if you're doing this with a typical grass seed with a ryegrass in that, you would never want to start in July. But it's the middle of July here, so 20 days already takes me to early mid-August, and that only gives me the rest of that month with enough heat to get this thing growing well and established. By the time we get to September already, our nighttime temperatures are dropping down pretty low, and growth really starts to slow down. There are many different ways to do this. You can use a drop spreader, which basically just drops the seed directly below your spreader. That gives you ultimate control, but that only covers the width of your spreader, and that can take quite a while. I've got a fairly large area, so I'm gonna go at it with this broadcast spreader. There is some guidance on the bag. You want about 1 pound of seed per 300 square feet. If you add that up, that's quite a bit. I've got 50 pounds of seed to use on my area. So I'm gonna keep that in mind. I'm gonna kind of tweak my setting here on my spreader as I go, but I'm gonna start with a number 5 on this Scott spreader and see how that works out. As you're getting your spreader settings fine-tuned, I'd recommend starting with a smaller amount of seed. That way, if your spreader setting is too high and all your seed goes woof, right out of the bottom, you didn't waste it all. You can course correct, go again. But that is the biggest risk. If you're putting on too light, you can just go over it again, no big deal. Like I said, I may have in the past had it on too high and you're cruising along, and before you know it, your seed's all gone. You covered like 10 steps. Don't do that. I'm going to start with this area down here. You can see the green streak that I resprayed the other day is starting to yellow a bit, so I'm confident I'm going to get 100% die off. But I want to get at this as soon as possible because, like I said, this seed has to sit for 20 days in good conditions before it even says, hey, it's time for me to germinate. So that's quite a long time. Got to get at it. I'm going to start with this area, throw down some seed. We've got 50 pounds of seed thrown down. The next thing we want to do is water. Now, if we look at my germination triangle, one of the reasons we want to water is to provide that seed moisture. It's one of the 3 prerequisites for getting that seed to germinate. But the other reason is our seed to soil contact. So you can see some of the seed made it to bare ground where we had areas of dirt exposed. However, in other areas where our grass is still present that we killed off, you can see the seed is hung up in the grass here, in the existing turf. So one of the reasons this no-till people don't do is because of that. It's difficult to get seed to soil contact. So the point of this initial watering is to flush these seeds off of these grass blades and get them down into the dirt so we can get seed to soil contact, so our clock can start ticking on that germination. It's been 11 days since seeding our bluegrass. You can see the existing turf is fully dead. And actually this worked out perfectly. So as it was alive and just sprayed and then turned brown for a few days, it was standing up straight nicely. We seeded over the top of it, watered it in, allowed those seeds to migrate down to the dirt. And now as it's dying off, it's falling over and creating a nice mat to shade and hold in moisture for that seed. Our bluegrass seed we put on when this grass was still standing up a little bit better, and we've watered it in pretty good. So if we look into here, the bluegrass seed has migrated down to the dirt, and as this existing turf is dying off, it's starting to lay over and create a nice mat, and it's actually staying quite damp under there. So I'm hopeful that we're going to get really good germination out of this process. It is the 29th of July, so 15 days after seeding, and we can see we're having pretty good success with germination. We're actually ahead of schedule. It's been about 15, 16 days and not the 20 that the bag officially says, but we can see all in here we've got bluegrass started. It's been 18 days since I seeded with the Kentucky bluegrass. I just finished fertilizing with broadcast spreading this 10-10-10 fertilizer. And you can see germination is off to a good start. I'm getting a tint of green in the sea of brown dead grass. So germination is right on track. If anything, it's a bit ahead of schedule, ahead of the 20 to 21 day germination time frame that Kentucky bluegrass officially lists. I believe that's because I've chosen a relatively warm time of the year, and I've made sure that I have water. So I've been watering with my irrigation system multiple times a day to keep things wet, and so I'm getting good germination. And I waited to fertilize now. I didn't put any fertilizer on with the seed because this bluegrass is relatively slow to germinate. We did have one pretty good rainstorm. We got 1.5 inches of rain. The risk is if you put on fertilizer with your seed, and you get a big rain like that, most of that is going to wash away into the ground through runoff, and your fertilizer is going to be gone. So I've waited till now when the grass is germinated, it's ready to take up that fertilizer and use it. Fertilizer really does not help germination at all. Again, germination is solely controlled by the 3 factors in my germination triangle. Once it's germinated though, that grass is looking for every nutrient it can get. I like to use the 10-10-10. You could also use a starter fertilizer, but you want to stay away from the normal lawn fertilizers. You notice they're heavy in the first number, which is solely nitrogen, and that's good for growth. But however, for these seedlings, we want root development is the most important thing we want right away, so that they get the roots down and established to tap that water, so that if we stop watering multiple times a day, they don't all die. That is a Shakespearean tragedy. If you work all this, pay all that seed, wait 20 days, and then you taper off the watering because you think you're out of the clear, well, that little seedling only has a tiny little root down in the dirt, and if you stop watering at that point, it takes literally a day, half day sometimes, that grass will be dead and it's not coming back. You got to start all over. So we want that root to go down very quickly. This phosphate and potash are the second 2 numbers, and those are critical for root development, especially the phosphate, the middle number. And so you can get that in a balanced general fertilizer like this. It was on sale, that's why I use this. Significantly cheaper per pound of nitrogen than a starter fertilizer actually, so that's why I went with this. That is your complete guide on how to do a no-till lawn renovation. Lawn renovation, change your grass species. I got sick of fighting the grass species that I was stuck with. Sometimes it's not your soil, it's not you, it's not your lawn care regimen, it's the lawn species that you're stuck with. Unfortunately, I can't blame somebody else. I originally planted this grass, but I killed it off and I'm starting over. I should have done a higher quality seed to begin with. I rectified that now. But you can too. Don't live with a grass species that's inferior. You don't have to. It's a little bit of work, but you can change it. And I just showed you how. Watch for updates. Hopefully this grass turns into a lush carpet by fall here. But I know from my previous lawn renovations, it may take up to a full year, so it might be next summer before it gets really established and good, but we're well on our way. Thanks for watching. Adios.